You've been playing a couple games, a couple projects from
Yeah.
the old folks over at Digital Eclipse. We're gonna start with the first one. You got the review code for this. You
Oh, yeah.
reviewed the original Atari 50 anniversary
Yep.
collection. Then you reviewed the recent part
The
one,
wider world of Atari.
Wider World of Atari, and now you've gotten the second part.
This
Um,
the final piece of the Atari
yeah,
puzzle.
the first console war.
Yeah, so
There you go. Now,
uh,
granted, by the way, this video doesn't show that, isn't just specific to that, but yeah, go ahead.
it covers a lot of what's
It
in this
covers a lot.
because
So yeah.
so yeah, so they now own Intellivision IP.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes sense to add on a very important little piece of the Atari
Sure.
history that you can kind of wedge in here now was that, yeah, the Atari and Intellivision were the original quote unquote console war.
Yeah.
Um, you had Atari and Mattel kind of butting heads at a point,
Sure.
trying to maintain, Mattel was, I would assume, still is the biggest toy company in the world, like at least in
Mm-hmm.
America. I mean, it's Mattel, like, it's between them and Hasbro. But at the time, in particular, Mattel in the early '80s was they owned the toy store shelves,
Sure.
and they didn't want to give up a single inch of shelf space to anyone else, that and Atari included. So they got their butts in on the game development and hardware business pretty early
Yep.
on here. Um, I don't know. What's your opinion on the Intellivision as a console? Did you ever have any? Do you have any
I
like?
had a friend that had it,
Yeah,
and I thought it was just quirky. At first it was funny because at first it was the competing. Yeah, it was that first console war. But man, it just fell by the wayside almost immediately because Atari had just better games. Like there were better games than Atari.
and that's that. So the documentary, I think of the set, you'll find that I think the documentary footage in this is definitely, I would say, my favorite of the pack
Okay.
altogether.
Okay.
It's really fun because it's a lot of the people that worked at Mattel talking about sort of the time working in on television stuff, sort of hand talking about how like it played out, and sort of
Hmm.
like, we knew we had the better looking games, but like, and
Yeah.
Atari's marketing at the time was like, yeah, like, how's their version of asteroids? Oh, they don't have
Sure.
one.
Yeah.
That
No.
was the thing. Atari had the games that people wanted, even if Intellivision had better looking games and better versions of some games.
Yep.
Even like the people that were involved in it's like, man, that controller was stuff.
Yeah. I
Nobody
remember
wants
that
to use.
controller.
It's just like a disc with a number
Yeah.
pad, and it's just not good. It's a bad
Mhm.
controller, and the Atari had a better controller. Anyway, so you're getting a lot of behind the scenes
Yep.
stuff with sort of Mattel making its way into the industry and taking it to Atari and a lot of that stuff. But the real sort of meat and potatoes of it is the M Network,
Oh.
which was Mattel's brand to sell their games, their Intellivision
Mhm.
games, on the 2600.
Mm.
And so all of the playable games on this are M Network games. They are, and so it's Mattel
Sure.
games that they've rebranded. So it's like some games, like, you recognize the game, but they've given it a new name. Like, they were trying to be
Yep.
clever, under like, and they didn't want to cannibalize their own market, I guess. I don't know what the deal
Mhm.
was, but yeah. So a lot of these games are like ports
Sure.
of Intellivision games that they changed the name for. It'd be like if Nintendo decided they wanted to put, like, well, let's go the other way. It's like if Sega wanted to put Sonic on on the Super Nintendo, but they did it.
Sure.
We
Yeah.
came up with the S Company, and made like this is Speedy, and it's the same game, just sort
Yeah.
of downgraded for the hardware that
Yeah.
it's going to or whatever. It's a weird concept. Like they weren't, but they did have the better sports games. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
they true. I do remember that because our friends, yeah, we would play with that weird
Yeah,
that weird
there's no
controller and think, yeah,
yeah.
this actually works for sports. You
Yeah,
need more buttons.
there's no debate on
Yeah.
the M Network sports games are better than the Atari games. Like the Intellivision, like them taking their sports games, downgrading them for the Atari, but still
Mhm.
making them better than Atari's sports games. Like their baseball is still way better than Atari's
Sure.
baseball. Um, and so like, and those are all here. Again, this is one of those things where the quality of the games is irrelevant to what the package is about. This
Yeah.
is a historical package dealing with a very pivotal time in gaming. I mean, like, we're not that far away from the bubble bursting by the
Mhm.
time this whole M Network thing pans out. And most people were sitting there and will think like this was sort of in television, sort of giving up. Basically, it's like the Intellivision's not making, but Atari was doing the same thing. Like that
Yeah.
was the
Yeah.
thing. Like Atari put their games on the Intellivision. One of the funny things that it never really dawned on me until they mentioned it in there, and I look at it, I'm like, how did I never notice that before? That the M Network games, the cart the cartridges are just Intellivision cartridges with like an Atari adapter on the
Yeah.
end of it. And it's just
Exactly.
like, and it was like,
Ex-
how, like, duh.
I
And it's
have
funny.
one. I think I have one M Network game here.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I can
It
tell
was,
because the shape of it is very. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I
yeah,
wonder
you
why
look
this
at
was
it,
shaped differently. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and it's just one of those weird things where it's
Yeah.
like the Tengen cartridges for
Yeah.
Nintendo
Yeah.
or whatever. It's just one of those weird, like, it could only happen in this Wild West days of early video
Sure.
games.
Sure.
It's the documentary footage is so fun. Talking to these people, or the thing that I love about this particular collection all around is that talking to Nolan Bushnell has sort of been pounded into the ground.
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
I feel like I don't need another. I don't need another thing out of his mouth. Like we've
Yeah.
got enough. We've gotten enough from Nolan Bushnell throughout the years. So it's like it's really nice because these are interviews with people that are still around, have lots of stories to tell.
Sure.
And because they've been around for so long, a lot of the stories may have been told before, but it's
Hmm.
all sort of like ephemera. It could have been in a magazine from like 1988 that
Hmm.
you've
Hmm.
never read and that has never been translated. Or, there's so many websites and they'll talk to so many people just on the whim that, like, who knows what
Yeah.
websites
Yeah.
some of this information has been like buried in throughout the years or whatever. It's hard, not information that just sort of like gather. There's not enough reading you can do to sort of gather a lot of the information you get from this.
Hmm.
So just consolidate it down and just get all these people into like their little. And you could tell the ones that's like there's just straight up Zoom calls on on these
Cool.
things. It's like, yeah, it's easier now to sit people down for a 25-minute interview than it's ever been, and they don't have to even leave their house. It's great.
I
It's
mean,
great.
it's great, and I think like this is we're at the point now where this collection. I know it's the first console war, but it really has sort of covered here was the 80s. Here was video
Yeah,
gaming in the 80s. Like this is what it was. Like everything prior to, like you
yeah,
said, before the bubble burst, before Nintendo. This is it.
yeah,
This is
yeah,
the 80s
yeah,
gaming. And they did, it looks like they've done an outstanding collection. Like now there's hours and hours of
yeah,
video that people can just sit
yeah.
through and
So,
watch and experience
yeah,
and go back through the history and look at all the different timelines. And I think that is fantastic. We've raved about Digital Eclipse's work
yeah.
on
The
these things, but
the one,
this seems to
yeah.
be like the pinnacle of the 80s gaming.
The one thing that the biggest regret that I have about this is like something that's kind of out of the control of everybody, because it's the same. You can only do so much with licensing. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Like some of the most
sure.
pivotal one of the most pivotal like moments in like this era of it just simply can't be covered for various
Yeah,
reasons. Like
yeah.
the reasoning for the market burst in the 80s, in like 83, 84, like it's like
Hmm.
the bad deals and like ET and Pac-Man 2600
Yeah.
and stuff like that, where it's just like bad business. Like they can't really be represented here. Like
Right.
it's part
Right.
of the history, but you just kind of have to like. Sometimes you just have to ignore stuff. It's like the Rare Replay collection, where it's like, man, a major part of Rare's history just has to be completely ignored and omitted,
Mhm.
and can only really be talked about in sort of like documentation, is then not like actual stuff. And you know, it's a bummer, but like I get it. But I wish there was something that could be done. I wish there was a way to preserve and feature,
Sure.
like, because like it really is like the two games that are missing the most representing
Yeah.
on this are
No.
those two, are Pac-Man and
And ET.
ET 2600. Like those two games, like,
Maybe down the line something can be, yeah, maybe
yeah.
there'll be some specialty, but
It, you know, being bad doesn't make you any less part of history,
yeah,
and they're probably some of the most critical parts of Atari's
sure.
history.
Yeah.
Nothing was ever the same again, you know, kind of stuff. So,
So you would recommend this?
oh yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. The whole package. I don't know if that. Roll the trailer back. Does it say when it's out? Is it out now?
No,
Is the whole
it's out now. Yeah, yeah.
okay? The whole physical pack. Get the whole package. You get
I
both
think so. Yeah,
DLC.
yeah.
You get both DLCs.
Buy
They're
now. It
great.
says buy now. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, the whole complete definitive edition is great. There's no if if you're looking to buy something to play,
Hmm.
probably not. I wouldn't recommend it for somebody who wants to play games, because I've said it before and
Yeah,
I'll say it
yeah.
again.
It's
A
not
lot of
bad,
a lot
right?
of these games aren't good, and this package thrives irrelevant of the games. It's the content.
Hmm.
It's the other stuff that contextualizes the
Sure.
games that you're probably not going to have a lot of fun playing, but you will appreciate them in a different way when you have sort of the context that surrounds them. So
Right.
yeah, this DLC gets a big old double J seal of approval, and the whole package gets like it's like a double stamp, I think. So
Yeah.
yeah, so